So just for the record, the game ended comfortably before lunch on the fourth day, with England adding just 17 runs for their last 2 wickets, with Wokes out for 19, Leach the last man out for 4, another overturned umpiring decision. England bowled out for 120, West Indies wanted 28 to win, and they knocked those off in 4.5 overs, with the captain Craig Brathwaite finishing on 20 not out. So before we get going with Dean, let's just give you some facts. England have won 1 test in the last 17, they've lost 11. They haven't won in the last 9 tests, and they've lost 6 of them. England have now lost 5 series in a row, albeit with that 1 test to play against India from last summer. England have won once in the Caribbean since 1968. Joe Root has had 64 tests as captain. He's won 27, but he's now lost 26, and both of those are records. So those are the bare facts of what happened in this match. I've got Dean Wilson here. I'm not sure where we start, really. I mean, we obviously knew this was the likeliest thing, but well, the Barmies were down there. They put their flags out again this morning, just thinking possibly there's going to be some sort of miracle.
Yeah, and it would have been some miracle indeed. I think we left room for about a 2% chance of something extraordinary occurring, but alas, it was not to be. And, you know, to be perfectly honest with you, we kind of saw it coming, I guess, not even from yesterday's performance, which was pretty poor with both ball and bat, but England really put themselves on the back foot from the word go with their collapse in the first innings.
Yeah.
You know, that was the first example really of some pressure coming onto the side in slightly trickier conditions. There was some good bowling. The pitch was offering a little bit more movement, but just the way that England were unable to find any way of kind of countering that with the batsmen that had scored so many runs already in the series was pretty disappointing. And you know, when you're relying on numbers 10 and 11 to get you a foothold in the game, you know you're always kind of behind the 8 ball, and so it proved it was a tremendous game of cricket, a fascinating game of cricket, and certainly a great one if you're a West Indies supporter. But for England, you know, 2 innings of disappointment from their batsmen, and that's why they've lost by 10 wickets.
Does it feel as if England have made progress in this series? I mean, given that the two winning draws, I described them as in Antigua and Barbados, although West Indies showed a lot of character to draw them, but it was England who had the men round the bat. It felt like they were a little bit more in control. But I mean, do you think has this set things back?
I'm not sure how much progress has been made ultimately when you come away with another series defeat. I'm well aware that the first 2 games had given them some hope, and it was certainly encouraging. You know, we can't forget, you know, how bad the batting has been for a period of time, that it was quite pleasant and pleasing to be able to write about, you know, Test match hundreds being scored and 500 being posted as a team.
They were 40 for 4 in that first match, and actually they fought their way out of that.
They did, yeah. Absolutely. Johnny Bairstow was outstanding in Antigua, and so that's one of the additional frustrations, I guess, is that players like Bairstow, Joe Root, Ben Stokes, you know, senior players, proven Test match performers, you know, were able to show their quality in 2 games, but then when it really mattered, when the game and the series was on the line in Grenada, they folded as much as the others, and it's it's a balancing act. You're trying to work out when you're kind of looking down the line, down the list of names. You know, someone like a Zach Crawley, who, you know, I've spoken so much about on the car journeys to and from the ground, because there is clearly ability there. You know, the way that he batted in Antigua to score that 100, you know, putting away the kind of big drive outside off stump until he was, you know, really well set, or the ball was a little bit older at least, you know, made you feel that a breakthrough had been made, that, you know, he's got it. You know, he's worked out how to stay in the middle so that he can unleash all the shots that we know he has. But then he does enough make you look like a bit of a fool thereafter, you know, as familiar failings reared their head in Barbados and then here in Grenada. So it's almost kind of 2 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Yep.
Maybe if you want to be really generous on the batting front, you could say 2 steps forward, 1 3/4 steps back. But then you've got to balance that up with the, what's gone on with the bowling attack and the new ball bowling, which at times has looked very ordinary, has allowed the West Indies to get away to some really good starts, has failed to use the new ball, which has been so important in this series as well, because it gets so soft so quickly. And at times it just hasn't been at the races, and there's been a lot of effort, a lot of endeavour, and I would never question how much these guys want it, how much they put in, how much training they do. We see them working ever so hard, but I think, as Joe Root said to us, and maybe said to you, it's a results business, and the results haven't been out there on the field.
Well, talking about the bowling, I mean, you cannot get away from the spectres at the feast, as it were. Messrs Broad and Anderson, and that's just not going to go away. I mean, I think, certainly from my perspective, Dean, and I think you and I have been quite consistent on this, we've always said you pick your best team. And if you are trying to pick a team up and get it off going in the right direction after a hammering like the Ashes, and with a captain who's actually in such a weak position as Joe Root was, there was all talk of him not being captain, resigning, there's lots of talk after the Ashes and so on. People think that he should have gone after the Ashes. Not to go with your best team and still hoping to go off into a brave new future, that must be a flawed decision.
I think so. I do, and I think to myself that actually they should have brought at least one of them. I think that it's the experience that they have, it's the skills that they have, but it's also the attitude and what it takes to be successful in Test match cricket. In taking wickets, getting the job done. They've done it so many times between them that you've got someone like a Craig Overton, Saki Mahmood, Matt Fisher, guys at the start of their international careers, Test careers, and you've got to wonder who are they turning to for that experience, that advice, or even a bit of that grumpiness that actually says, yeah, it might hurt a bit, there might be blood coming out of your boots, but you know what, you just kind of keep going. And who do
you think made the decision? I mean, there's still not clarity about who made the decision not to bring him. There was a 3-man selection committee. Andrew Strauss, as we know, was in a temporary position. Paul Collingwood, temporary as well. James Taylor as the selector. It was Andrew Strauss who phoned them up to tell them that they hadn't been selected. I mean, how much do you think Joe Root was involved in that decision? If you speak to the 2 players concerned, they don't seem sure either as to whose decision it was not to bring them.
Yeah, I can't believe that the captain wasn't okay with it. He's trying to rebuild and launch his new look or new era, and needs to have some success in doing so. And I can't believe that if he wanted both or at least one of them to be here, that they're not here. I find that very hard to believe. So I do think that he would have been happy with it, but at the same time, I also know that Andrew Strauss has spent a lot of time, with Stuart and James, and kind of knows plenty about them, and can, is in a position to formulate an opinion of whether he thinks now is the right time to kind of move on. So yes, it's a little bit grey and a little bit vague, and actually it's disappointing either way for Joe Root. If Joe Root wasn't involved and absolutely was anti the decision, then he should have been upfront and honest about it and said, well, they're the selectors, they're the ones who make the decision, I just have to kind of go along with it. He could have done that quite happily. He didn't, which is why I think he was happy with the call, but it hasn't worked, because they've had periods here, as I say, with that new ball where England haven't been at the races, and just to be able to throw the ball on even a surface like this. I mean, Jimmy Anderson, one of the great misnomers about Jimmy Anderson is that he's a swing green surface pitch up merchant and can only thrive in those conditions, and it's balderdash. I mean, the guy can take wickets on gravel, snow, ice, grass, whatever it is, the flattest roads I've seen him thrive, and on the juiciest surfaces as well. So, to not have his ability out here was a mistake.
Yeah, it seems unthinkable that both of them, I'd imagine, will be in the squad for the first test of the summer if they're both fit enough. Let's hear from the captain then, shall we? Joe Root, who spoke to me after England's defeat. Well, Joe, that's a bit of a punch to take, I would guess.
It is a punch to take because for the majority of this series we played so much good cricket. It's been a very hard-fought series. We've gone toe-to-toe the whole way, and yesterday was a really frustrating day to take because guys have worked so hard, they've done so much good stuff throughout, and some poor decision-making, and at times lack of skill has probably just let us down when we really needed to stand up. And that's the frustration. That's something that we have to keep looking to learn from. We made some big steps forward in a number of areas in the first two games, and I think that's the bitter pill that we just have to swallow, and we have to keep looking to learn from.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that the conditions are more challenging here and more pressure on the batting? Is that in any way explains the collapse?
Well, I don't think you can say it was a good wicket for batting, but we just didn't suss it out at all. No one got themselves in. No one really, apart from Alex at the top of the order, found a way of sort of building some sort of innings on it. And even then, it was quite hard to score fluently on. Even Josh for them, who made a brilliant 100 on a difficult wicket. It was never a free-flowing scoring kind of surface, and we didn't manage that well enough. And that's the frustration. That's where we have to learn. We found ourselves in a pressure situation in the first game, and we found a way out of it, and that was a real positive step forward for us. And we didn't get it right yesterday, and they're the moments that if you're going to start turning promising games and nearly games into victories, that you've got to get right, and that's what we have to do better.
Does it feel like a backward step? I mean, you were pleased with those first two games, but to end as this one has done.
Well, it's a big frustration, as I mentioned. You can see it on the group. We've put so much into this trip, and I think our attitude throughout has been exceptional. You can, having conversations with you privately, you can see it's clear as day that there's been a big shift in a number of areas, and that's a real step forward for this group. But it's a bit of a body blow what happened yesterday, but we have to take it on the chin. We have to learn, and we have to not forget a lot of the good things that we've done till now.
Yeah. I've got to ask you about the omissions of Broad and Anderson, just because they kind of seem relevant in these conditions. I mean, were you looking for them during this game?
I mean, we've gone over old ground here, haven't we? We've spoken enough about that. If being honest, you could say the same about the two injured lads as well. That could have been very useful on that wicket, 90 mile an hour bowler in Woody and someone with Robbo's skill level. If they were, you could also look at that. But the one thing that we have got from this trip is we've seen two young debutants come in and show a lot of promise, and they're at the start of a very exciting journey, and we've learned a lot about a number of other aspects as well in that department.
How about you, Joe? I mean, you've talked very positively about wanting to take this job on, but you must be fed up of doing interviews like this.
Yeah, but I'm still very passionate about taking this team forward, and I feel like there's the support of the dressing room behind me, and I'm desperate to turn that around, and to see them smiling, celebrating, because we don't feel that far away. It's an easy thing to say, and it's probably a frustration for a lot of people to hear, but very passionate about taking it forward, and hopefully that'll be the case.
So you want to carry on? I mean, there's a lot of uncertainties there. No manager, director, no coach, no chairman. I mean, there seems to be such little in place as far as the administration is concerned. But you want to carry on as captain?
Yeah, I've made that quite clear. And all I can control is what's in my power and in my hands. And that's at the minute that's trying to take this team forward and take it on. And I'll do everything I can, whether in whatever capacity, to help England win games of cricket, and that will never change.
Do you share the fans' view, or some fans' view, that with all these positions that are vacant at the moment, there is this kind of feeling of void about English cricket.
Again, that's out of my control. My control is looking after what's here right now and this group of players, and making sure we're doing everything we can to get the best out of each other, and putting the talent and energy and efforts into performance and wins. And it's frustrating studying with nothing to show off the back of a very hard-fought series, but we have to take quite a lot of confidence from very good cricket on this trip.
Well, there's Joe Root speaking to me. Well, there was still a sparkle in the eyes. He talked about wanting to take England forward. It's a familiar mantra. There were a lot of things in there that I think we could have predicted he'd have said. He didn't say, "I resign." You never quite know in these situations what that was going to be. But I think there is a strong acceptance now from him that this whole question of the captain is out of his hands. I mean, he did say that before the game anyway. But I think if they'd won here, then obviously he would have a stronger claim to it. But now, I mean, he's just got to wait and see who comes in and who makes those decisions.
Yeah, that's his. He has to wait and see on that. But I mean, he's very clear that he's not going anywhere of his own volition. He's absolutely adamant that he retains obviously the support of everyone involved in the side, in the dressing room, in the coaching staff, which is understandable. Wouldn't expect anything else. But obviously he also kind of looks at himself. I wrote something today about those. It's about those quiet moments when there's no noise and there's no one else, and it's just you in the thinking to yourself, going over collapse after collapse, and having to deal with the questions from thee and me and all the rest of it, and just wonder to yourself, am I the right person? Are my words getting through anymore? I mean, he's been there for 5 years, so
that's the trouble. I think you're saying the same things. We do it in football and everything else. That manager has to go. They don't change any of the players, nothing else. New man comes in, says more or less the same stuff, but with a different voice, and bingo, they start scoring goals, they start going up the table, just purely because someone else is delivering what is largely a familiar message. It's a different way of putting it.
I think you're absolutely right, but it's very difficult, I think, for Joe to kind of see that bigger picture, because he's convinced that the work that he's doing and the way that he's going about it is spot on. He has had success. It's not as though Joe Root has been an utter failure as England captain, as some might try and have you believe. He has won more matches than anyone else previously. I know it's partly due to the amount of cricket being played, and I know it's also because there are more results these days than there are draws. But still, he's had a lot of success as England captain, and so I can understand why he feels that he can inspire that again. But on the flip side, he's been beaten in the West Indies twice now. He's been thrashed in Australia twice. And at some point, you've got to say, well, actually, maybe a different voice, a different approach might just be the spark that is required.
And there's also that combination with the coach. If we go back to when England have reset, to use a familiar phrase, 1999, when England were booed at the Oval when they lost to New Zealand at the bottom of the rankings, Nasser and Duncan Fletcher. There was the time when, of course, Andrew Strauss and Andy Flower just kind of linked up together, and that again started a resurgence that took England to number one. I can't help feel it feels like that sort of time now, as if there does have to be a fresh start. It just feels like that around the setup. Do you think?
It feels as though there needs to be a greater acceptance of where they are in the grand scheme of things. That this team isn't particularly good. They're bottom of the World Test Championship table for a reason, and a new coach, a new captain could work. I mean, there's no guarantee. It's a funny kind of alchemy, really. It's
a lottery, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, when Duncan and Nasser came together, I don't think anyone could have predicted how things would have transpired. And likewise, Andy Flower, only came on board as an interim coach, with Peter Moore's kind of moving on. It wasn't planned. None of it was sort of planned in that way. And in a funny sort of way is that everything at the moment, it seems like they want to have grand plans. They want to plan for the Ashes in 4 years' time. They want to plan to have a captain installed for a decent length of time. Sometimes you've just got to deal with the here and now, what's in front of you, picking your best team and picking the best person to deal, with the captaincy or to deal with that job, and actually not get too far ahead of yourself. And I
think it's
feels
a good
like
thing
that
when you get a captain and a coach starting together, because you can work out whose areas are their strengths. You can actually sort of divide up the job, and it is a sort of a combined job really, being captain and the coach, isn't it? And you can work out particular areas that you excel at, which you're more comfortable at, and that you start with that blank sheet of paper. Whereas if a new coach were to come in and find Joe Root clinging to the job by his fingernails, but he's been doing it for 5 years, and he is England's most successful captain statistically, that coach perhaps not quite start on the same level footing. Maybe it just seems that there have been times in recent English cricket history where the really successful runs have been from that.
It's, as I say, it's a funny kind of situation, because I know what you're saying about starting together, but then Duncan and Michael Vaughan actually worked, really well, and we had 2005, but Michael came in, knowing what Duncan was like as a coach, having just been a player before, then becoming captain.
They knew each other.
They knew each other. Joe Root came in as captain when Trevor Bayliss was still in charge, and kind of understood, how he operated, and then getting a coach come in when Joe had already been captain. We've tried that with Chris Silverwood, and that hasn't really worked. So. To be the long and the short answer is that you just don't know until you know.
No, very true. There's a vote, by the way, on the BBC Sport website asking who could captain England in the first test of the summer against New Zealand. It's still open, you can still vote. Currently, Stokes 26%, Root and Broad level at 18%, Bairstow's in there 11%, Sam Billings 8%, Zach Crawley 3%, and AN Other, unnamed, is at 16%. So that rather sums up what you're saying. So in third position is someone who's got no name.
Well, A and Other is a terrific player. I mean, really, he's a super player.
I wonder who it is. So as far as director of cricket and coach, I know it's a constant conversation. We really don't know the answers to this, but names in the hat. Is it fair to say that Marcus North seems to have his nose in front for that MD job?
Yeah, Marcus North, absolutely has been mentioned. Been working up at Durham, I think South Northumberland first, and then Durham thereafter. He's obviously got that international experience, but with an Anglo-centric kind of sensibility, despite being a Western Australian. And then, there are other English names, being put forward as well. I think Rob Key, Mark Nicholas, Ed Smith. These are all guys who've been linked with the job, and I'm sure there are plenty others who'd have applied as well. And it's such an important job to get right. There's quite a lot of change going on at the ECB from top to bottom, and so many important positions, and getting the right personnel in each of them is absolutely fundamental. And in terms of the men's cricket team, everything flows from the MD. The MD is the person who will appoint a coach, maybe two coaches, one for red ball, one for white ball, and there's picking up the test team from this really low point is going to be a huge task. So getting that coach is absolutely spot on, because from that coach then will come the captain and so on, and then are they going to go back to a national selector, identifying talent, how they're going to do that. There's so much kind of shifting sands at the moment that the fundamental thing to get right is the right people in the right positions.
Langer, Kirsten, What are the names?
Yeah, Langer, Kirsten.
I think the main coach would be an overseas one, don't you? I mean, Paul Collingwood said if they offer it, he'll take it.
Yeah, Paul Collingwood,
feels more of a one-day one. Perhaps.
He's enjoyed it. Yeah, perhaps so. I mean, Mahela Jai Warden is another name, perhaps for a white ball coach. There are a lot of coaches out there, and
a lot of coaches who actually have a very nice living just working on the franchises, who might not want to be away for months and tramping around the international circuit.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because there's become this narrative that working on the international circuit and travelling the world and putting your heart and soul into an endeavour to make a team better and enjoy the success and otherwise of that, and being really handsomely well paid for it, and staying in lovely hotels, being able to bring your family with you as and when, and all the various other bits that go with it, is in some way a horrible existence. And I can't for the life of me understand why this has become, the narrative has become, why would you want to be England coach? I mean, it blows my mind, because I think it's one of the greatest jobs in sport, full stop. I mean, you'd be absolutely blessed and fortunate to be given that chance. So
Dean Wilson throws his hat into the ring. That'd be a Daily Mirror headline. I can see it coming. More from Dean in a second. Let's get some reaction from the West Indies, though. I've been talking to Craig Brathwaite.
Well, Craig, how proud are you after that?
I'm extremely proud. The boys really worked hard. Before we had a little camp, and we set some targets, some goals, and very, very happy for the team.
Yeah. Talk me through the innings there, the century maker. That was a terrific innings, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was amazing. Josh, the way Josh and Jada would have played yesterday evening. Well, morning, sorry. Was top effort. I told him 50 balls I wanted to bat 58 balls. I mean, it's top effort.
Yeah. And Mayo's with the ball also?
Yeah, I always know he has a knack to get wickets, and I know he has a lot of skill, and I'm very proud of him, and I'm very happy for the team, man.
Yeah. And it's been a hard series, a hard-fought series, hasn't it? Nothing given.
Nah, I mean, the first two games went right down to the last 10 minutes of the game, and the guys showed a lot of fight those two last days when we had a bat. And then we showed a lot of fight in this game, from the bowlers, and the batsmen. Was remarkable effort. I mean, obviously England played extremely well, throughout the series, and I'm thankful that we came out on top in this game.
Yeah. There's lots of chuntering in the British supporters about Broad and Anderson not being here. Do you think that would have made a difference?
I mean, I can't say. I know they're very quality bowlers, but obviously the bowlers England had here were quality as well. So it's pretty tough for me to say, but obviously they're very, very experienced bowlers.
Yeah. I've just spoken to your coach Phil, and he was saying he's so proud about the unity that the team is showing at the moment.
Yeah. I think these guys, we've been playing for a few years now together. A few of the guys from on the 19 cricket, and we really gelling together nice. And what's great is that Kemar Roach and Jason Holder, two senior guys, Jermaine Blackwood leading from the front, from meetings to on the field. It's been remarkable, man.
Why can't England come here and win, Craig? Why do you keep beating us?
Well, I mean, I can't say it. I mean, we played some good cricket, and as I said, we showed a lot of fight. The first test, having to bat the 60, 70 overs, and then in Barbados, obviously Jack Leach bowled extremely well, and we had a fight through, 60, 70 overs again. England played well, and obviously this last game, went in our favour, but it's a remarkable series once again.
Well, that was Craig Brathwaite talking to me earlier, and now I'm joined by Joel Manning, who's been reporting for BT Sport during the course of this series. Nice to have you with us, Joel. One happy man, I suspect.
Oh, definitely. I mean, off the back of what were two tame draws, to come here to Grenada and see the excitement, feel the excitement, and then watch a West Indies win. I mean, doesn't get much better than that.
Does it mean that Grenada's a shoo-in now for the next 20 years of West Indian Test matches, I wonder?
I mean, I would like to think that. I mean, if we could play all the tests here and the results go exactly how it went, I'll take it every day of the week.
Yeah. Very different conditions. And we know that the government actually had a few words about that, didn't they? But, I mean, was there a feeling of disappointment in Barbados? I saw you out in the middle a few times. about the conditions there and at Antigua, and that actually this series needed a bit of a lift.
No, it really did. Honestly, Grenada was the life to this entire test series. Honestly, like when you think back to Antigua, we showed up on day one. I was like, it's there wasn't much life, there wasn't much color to it. And from the time the first delivery was bowled, we knew that we were there for 5 days of what was going to be a draw. Turned up in Barbados, and we swore that we took the pitch from Antigua, put it on the plane, and just rolled it out in Barbados also, because it pretty much played out the same. I had a quick chat with Ben Stokes, I think probably after day 2, and I questioned, what's the difference? He said, well, this one bounces a bit more, and we had a laugh about it, but that was about it. So honestly, I think in terms of a test cricket pitch, maybe there was a level of disappointment, especially given that in the Caribbean, especially like a place like Kensington, we know it for a bit more bounce, a bit more pace, and it actually produces results. When we think back to just when Jason has scored a double, that was a wonderful victory there, for the West Indies. So to come off of that and then have that draw, it was but Grenada has certainly sealed it off.
Yeah. Do you think West Indies cricket is still struggling to get its latest identity? I mean, is that why these pitches have been so flat and slow? I mean, you had the golden era of the fast bowlers and the brilliant batsmen. Then the pitches started to spin, and there's quite a sort of a southern Caribbean influence. Well, now it seems to be going back to the quicker boys again, but the pitches and the attitudes haven't quite caught up with that.
I'm not sure if it has to do with the state of the West Indies cricket team, because I mean, to be honest, I don't think those are the type of pitches that they want to be prepared to have a better team at the end of the day. Maybe it's a case of there's not much communication between the type of pitches that we want to actually produce in the Caribbean. Maybe it's, for example, when we think about Kensington, there were 2 first-class games played at Kensington just before that test series. So when we think about preparation times, maybe things like that. So I think it's more so a communication, more so of a logistics issue when it comes to the pitches and not necessarily the team. In terms of, is the team, I don't know, making a resurgence? I definitely wouldn't think that. I mean, today's performance tells you there's something good about it, but
you West Indies are always so glass half empty.
You look at it on a broader scale, because you still have to think back to the performances before this, the results before this. So you're going to look at this performance and say, yes, this was brilliant. England definitely did not put up much of a fight when it came to the last 2 days, so you're going to judge it also based on what actually took place. So you say, this is a good step in the right direction, but are we at the gates of heaven yet? I don't think so.
I remember saying 4 years ago, Joel, to my old friend Andy Roberts at Antigua, and I said, this is a makings of a really good team here. Oh, no, this won't happen, blah, blah, blah. I know that the glory days are still some way in the background there. But don't you feel that when and the vibe that's here, the music, it seemed to me on this tour as well, just talking to local people, that there's more interest in cricket again. It does seem to be on the way up.
It is. I will not lie. It is on the way up, and especially when you think about the way Craig Brathwaite went about that ending here today, it tells you that there is something coming about. So it's not to say that West Indies cricket is down in the dirt and will never resurface. It is definitely sprouting, and coming forth. But like I say, it's not necessarily in full bloom as yet. But the signs are there. Like I said, back to Craig Brathwaite at Kensington. The innings that he played in Antigua, almost around the ball, we don't expect that from Craig Brathwaite. So we can see the signs there. We see signs with De Silva. We see signs with Jaden Seals. Kemar Roach is the experience, and he's backed it up. He's talked about the pitches, but he's also produced, So there are the signs that we can get back to the glory days, but I'm not going to, wave the pom-poms and say, yes, we have arrived. I am happy to see the progress, and I want to continue seeing the progress so I can have more days like today where, we're finished pretty early.
Yeah, that is true. Phil Simmons, the coach, I was chatting to him down there. He and I go back a long way, and he made the point that he's really pleased about the unity about the team, which is always an issue in this part of the world, isn't it? And I mean, do you feel that? Do you feel that all these countries forming together is actually clicking again, like in Clive Lloyd's day, for instance?
It would appear that way, because I've been able to spend a bit of time around the lads on a morning. You hear the music going, you hear the laughter coming out, so you would tell yourself that yes, it is definitely getting back to a position whereby we're seeing ourselves as just one Caribbean and not 6 different nations playing out there. So I can say yes, from what I've been able to observe. Obviously I can't be behind the scenes, down in the lockers, etc., but from the signs and from the way that I've seen them hanging out at the hotels, some of the game room sessions that I've been able to able to watch across the social media platforms, etc., you can tell yourself that maybe things are gelling better than they have in the past.
That's good. And as a last one then, Mr. Glasshoff, empty. When's your glass going to fill up? What would it take for you to think, yeah, come on, things are really moving here now?
Consistency. That's what like any other team is consistency, because it's like you get 80% on a test today, but then the next 6 tests you end up at a 40%, you know. You want to, even if it's not necessarily every day at 80, every day at 90, you want to see a 75, you want to see a 70, you know, and that tells you that things are happening, because it's not every day 11 players are going to click.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of any team, any scenario, any situation. But you want to see that 3 guys. I did an interview with Jason, and he said, you know what, sometimes it's a case of one person shows up. If you could have 2 people showing up, 3 people showing up, 4 people showing up, consistency, not necessarily the same people, but at least every single time at least 3 people show up, then West Indies will be dominant again in world cricket.
The TMS podcast from BBC Radio 5 Live.
Well, there's some West Indies perspective as well. It's nice to balance it up, and it was a terrific win for them here, and they thoroughly deserved their victory. Anything else we can chat about? I've been very grumpy about the umpiring, Dean. I've got to be honest with you. I got what the final tally was. I think 22 overturned decisions in the end, or at least one should have been if England had done it. I mean, you know, it just goes on and on. But there were a couple of duffers today. Again, just poor decisions being made, and I know the review system is there to take the howler out, but I mean, crikey, there's just been so many.
There have been some rather interesting decisions, shall we put it that way? But you know, the umpires are like players. You know, these are their big matches, and you know, in the case of Gregory Brathwaite and Nigel Dogood, you know, they're not on the ICC elite panel like Joel Wilson isn't. You probably expect a higher level of accuracy from a member of the elite panel, but you know, they're human too, and I think they make their decisions in good faith. It's very hot out there. You know, the pressure is on them as much as it is for the players. However, I've got huge concern that the ICC have just seemed to ignore the fact that the elite panel should be moving around the world and taking hold of test matches in various countries. I understand during the pandemic it was necessary for home umpires to stay put, but you know, that has largely gone now, that there is no reason why the elite panel can't move around the world and take control of these games, other than of course it saves the ICC a bit of cash, but they've got lots of cash, so they should get those neutral umpires, those elite umpires back out there, and hopefully get those percentages of correct decisions up again.
Yeah.
This is the TMS podcast from BBC Radio 5 Live.
Now, England players then, I mean, This tour was to be finding out about new players, to give opportunities to those. I mean, I remember Chris Wokes being very much singled out at the start of this as he could take the new ball, which he never could do without Broad and Anderson were in the side, and so on. There were one or two that you could see were being pointed out. I mean, Alex Lees, of course, the latest to open the batting. So I've just put a bit of a list together here, Dean, and we'll get. What I've done, I've got players in credit, those who've got sort of a bit of work to do, and then those that I think have probably gone backwards on this tour. So let's see if you agree or not. I mean, in credit, I think Alex Lees has shown a good technique. He'll get 1 or 2 more shots in the locker, but I mean, Alistair Cook scored 1 million runs with only 3 or 4 shots to go on. Dan Lawrence, liked him, batted lots of flair, and disappointing how he got out here. Obviously in the second innings, but
I think for the likes of Lees and Lawrence, young players or inexperienced players, at the relative start of their Test careers, you're going to get inconsistency unless you're Brian Lara or Alistair Cook or one of the greats coming into a side. You're going to get inconsistency, so you have to allow for that a little bit. So in the case of Lawrence, I think yes, he's in credit because the way he played in both Antigua and Barbados was very much for the team, very selflessly, and when conditions were in his favour, he really took advantage of that. He elevated the game in Barbados, I thought, wonderfully well, and so I give him a big tick for that. But of course then, on this pitch where there was a little bit more in it, and he found it difficult, to line up his off stump. He made that misjudgment in the second innings. you're going to take a little bit back. But overall, something encouraging from him. And likewise with Lees, in the end, he was the only England batsman who really stood firm on this pitch. And in the end, it was a bit of a shooter that got him. So, a bit of credit for them at the moment.
Yeah, Stokes 100 again. He's had a difficult time. And then to Mahmood and Fisher. Fisher didn't play in this one, but again, I think Mahmood particularly. I mean, he's been one of the finds of the tour.
I think Mahmood, from the moment his name was put into that squad, I was looking forward to seeing him play and get a bowl. It was kind of hopeful, that he may not have done had Mark Wood been fit and Ollie Robinson fit. So I think he's absolutely grabbed his chance as best as he could. I think he's shown real, not only just potential, but actually real skill out there. The West Indies, found him the most threatening bowler, I think, in Barbados. Got 2 genuine edges through to the slips, which no other bowler really managed to do with that older ball. So big tick for Mahmood for me, and I really look forward to seeing him play in the summer.
Yeah. Johnny Bairstow, good 100 in Antigua, always enthusiastic. I think he gets a tick for me. Jack Leach is an interesting one because I've got Jack in the credit there because although I think he was disappointed with how he bowled in Barbados on that pitch, what I like about Leach is A, he acknowledges that, and B, he's working so hard to get better. I know I can do better, so I'm putting him in credit for that.
I think Jack's had a good tour. I think
11 wickets. He's a top wicket taker.
He's a top wicket taker.
Yeah.
He's bowled over after over. He's bowled so many overs. He's also, dug. It almost feels a little unfair for him. I know he's not here for his batting, but just the commitment and the way that he dug England out of a bit of a hole in Grenada is all credit to him.
Well, you probably wouldn't know. My slightly left field suggestion for the last 4 or 5 years is that if necessary, Wokes could open the batting for England. If you needed a bit of, you're in Sri Lanka and you need a bit of jiggling around. I'm now axing Wokes from that position, and I'm saying Leach could get out there as an opening batsman in that sort of dogged situation where you're trying to balance a team up, get some bowlers in. What do you reckon? You've got great technique.
How do I put this?
Come on.
I don't think so, Agus.
Hasn't got many shots.
No.
He's got 90 odd.
That's right, but I think Jack is the archetypal night watchman. Right, who could do a job, who can frustrate and hold up an opposition, but I'm not counting on Jack for an opening spot, that's for sure. I'm
putting him in there only in emergencies. That's what I'm saying. Work to do. It's a bit of a tricky one, this, because I've got Root in there for his captaincy, but Root obviously he scored successive hundreds, so from that, I think you keep the two matters apart. Except the good thing is that the captaincy woes, if you like, hasn't affected his form. But work to do. I've got Crawley, Overton, and Folkes in there. Folkes did keep well. The reason I've got in there is I'm still not entirely convinced about number 7, and that run out was an utter brainstorm.
It was a shame for Ben, because I think that he had a couple of opportunities on this trip. I think he got the 40 odd in Antigua, when there was a real chance for him actually to go on and go quite big there. And then here in Grenada, it's cruel to compare like for like, their wicketkeeper with England's wicketkeeper, but that's what we do. And to see the way Joshua Da Silva really battled, really understood the situation of the game,
the limitations that you play on,
and then the limitations, absolutely. And to my mind, I don't see any reason why Ben Folkes couldn't have played an innings like that. And maybe it's a lot to ask, but I think that he's got that ability, and to see him really give his wicket away, I mean, to run that second and give up such a gift like that, totally unnecessarily, was a real low point.
Backwards, well, Chris Wokes did have all that opportunity. I feel a bit hard putting him in there because he bowled on 2 of the flattest pitches. Here's your golden opportunity, Chris. You're getting the new ball overseas. Come and show us what you can do. But he bowled on 2 absolute roads.
And also, I think I've mentioned before, he's played a lot of cricket this winter, and he's a key member of the T20 side at the World Cup. I think he played 4 out of the 5 Ashes matches, and then to be asked to, here you go, lead the attack away from home with a ball that's going to do you no favours on a couple of surfaces. They're going to do you no favours. That's pretty tough. But you know what? I mean, I've spoken to him a few times, and he makes no excuses. I mean, he just says that's my chance, and I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to give it a great go, and I'm a cricketer. This is what I do, and there hasn't been a word of mumble or grumble at all from him. He has been utterly committed, and I can only commend him for that. He's a great guy, Chris.
Yeah. Someone who has not had a good tour is Ollie Robinson, who we haven't seen really. He would have bowled well on this, and there was lots of talk about his fitness, wasn't there, coming from the bowling coach at Hobart, and then he's had this back spasm here that hasn't allowed him on the field at all. I mean, do you think he's got some work to do? Absolutely, he's got work to do. I mean, this is a real worry for him and for England. That a back spasm the fact that can keep you out of 3 matches when usually they kind of come and go. Maybe 1 match for sure, but what I found was a bit concerning was that in the lead up to the second test, everything seemed to be working perfectly well, and he was bowling out in the middle, bowled with good pace. And then the closer we got to that second test, something went wrong. Right when he was in the mix for selection, and they said, "Okay, well, we're not going to pick you for that second test. Not quite ready just yet." So then he didn't play, and just after the second test, he felt pretty good and came charging in again, bowled in between the games, and didn't have to go out and play in the match. But the closer we got to the next game, when selection was up for grabs, something went wrong. He went backwards and was unavailable. And and then we were told after the third test started, the day after, he feels great. Yeah, he can bowl no problem. So that is a concern for sure, because we know that he's a talented bowler, but talent alone will not get you 50 caps. You've got to get on the field and show what you can do. Well, the 2 names definitely in credit at the end of this, Messrs. Broad and Anderson. I think we can take that for granted.